Hi everyone, good evening and welcome to this event with Mustafa Barghouti on Palestine's struggle for justice in 2025. This event is hosted by Labour and Palestine in association with Arise, a festival of left ideas. Just to introduce myself, my name's Rachel Garnham. I'm a former member of Labour's NEC, a UCU trade union activist, and a long-term supporter of the cause of Palestinian rights. And I'm so pleased that we've been able to rearrange this event, and apologies we weren't able to go ahead previously, but I'm really glad that we will have Mustafa Barghouti with us this evening to report on the situation in Palestine. So we meet at a vital time, obviously, for all of us interested in campaigning for and committed to campaigning for Palestinian rights, with the so-called ceasefire in its early days, the devastating scenes still from both Gaza and the West Bank, and Trump returning to the US presidency with his remarks essentially advocating ethnic cleansing. Really still very difficult times in Palestine. We also meet at a time of strong solidarity with the Palestinian people here and internationally, but with worrying and growing signs of police and state intimidation of Palestine protesters, which people will have seen. The horrific images coming out of daily from Gaza and indeed the West Bank over the last 15 months must not be forgotten. And the long-term policy of the Israeli state is clearly acting against any independent state for Palestine and the Palestinian people's right to self-determination. We must, therefore, continue to speak up for the cause of Palestine, shine a spotlight on Israel's horrific actions. We must not look away. We're delighted that Mustafa Barghouti is able to join us today to talk about the latest developments, and also to hear from campaigner and Palestine expert Hugh Lanning to introduce Mustafa. So Mustafa is a Palestinian physician, activist and politician who serves as General Secretary of the Palestinian National Initiative. He has been a member of the Palestinian Legislative Council since 2006, and is also a member of the Palestine Liberation Organization Central Council. And we really appreciate him being able to rearrange this meeting with his extremely busy schedule. Before I hand over to our speakers, I'd really like to ask people if they can donate to the streaming costs for this event and all the excellent work that the team at Arise do and Labour in Palestine can in order to organise this event, and there'll be a link in the chat where you can donate. So we've also got the Q&A on this evening, and we're hoping to have some time for questions later, so please do introduce yourself in the Q&A, tell us where you're joining from, and also start putting in your questions if you'd like to. So without further ado, you didn't come to listen to me, you want to hear our speakers, so I'm going to first introduce Hugh Lanning, and then Hugh will introduce us to Mustafa. Over to you, Hugh. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you everyone who's joining us this evening for this very important and well timed, I think, in the end, briefing from Mustafa. And thanks to Mustafa for once again finding time to brief us and to talk to us this evening amidst everything that's going on. I'm not going to particularly talk about the situation in Palestine. Mustafa will be doing that. I want to talk a little bit more about the UK and the UK's role and what's going on here. But obviously the ceasefire was a merciful relief for Palestinians from the daily fear and reality of death and bombardment. But the media hypocrisy surrounding it, when there was the sort of Israeli hostages who were all the celebrations and how wonderful they were, and then the Palestinian prisoners who were guilty of crimes and little said about their conditions. I mean, the Palestinians tried in military courts by Israelis, guilty mainly of being Palestinian, and that wasn't addressed and wasn't talked about, nor was anything really about the future or peace. Israeli politicians were reported going on about how they wanted to get back to war in 6 weeks' time when all the hostages were returned. So Starmer's statement on the ceasefire ignored international law, the judgments of the ICC and the ICJ on war crimes and genocide. And there's no point in him saying that they should rebuild Gaza if Israel remains free to do what it has done all over again. And then you had the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, saying there was no need for pro-Palestinian marches in London to continue if Israel-Gaza ceasefire holds. And I was there at the last march, and the arrests you could see were clear entrapment by the police to try and prevent future marches. But Khan's fundamentally misses the point. Ceasefire isn't peace. It is a return to war, siege, military occupation, the settler violence, the attacks in the West Bank, as they were before October, but only worse. The need for ongoing solidarity, including marches, is exemplified by Trump. Him saying that he wants to remove 1.5 million people and we just clean out the whole thing is manna from heaven to the Israeli right and Netanyahu, not that they really need it. But these reactions, Starmer's statement, are not an aberration. It is the norm for Labour and British governments throughout modern history. Since the 19th century, before Balfour, UK governments have always supported the colonisation of Palestine and give life to the Zionist dream of Israel. It was not out of any desire to make good all the wrongs the West had done to Jews for centuries, but to block, starting with the 1905 Aliens Act, and block and discourage Jews from coming here. Balfour, in giving away Palestine for Jewish settlement, was, of course, treating Palestinians in an inferior way because they're Arabs, infidels, and somehow lesser beings with no rights to self-determination. And Britain's betrayal of Palestine is our story, not someone else's. Palestine now is not a legacy. It's an ongoing colonial war seeking to impose an imperial solution on a local population. It is a war in which Britain is not a bystander, not an onlooker. It is the instigator, the promoter, and supporter of that war. Britain's role has probably been even more critical in the settler colonization of Palestine than the US's. Although they've supplied multi-billion amounts of arms and ammunitions, it was the British who supplied the end, the narrative that is used to justify the war on Palestine. And it was a deeply anti-Arab, anti-Semitic role and narrative that we have supplied. It is clear from what's been going on, there is no epiphany, no moment of blinding revelation when the level of Israel's atrocities are such that Starmer and his ilk go, okay, enough is enough, stop. As the Palestinian death toll rises remorselessly towards 50,000 and beyond, it is already clear that there is no figure that is unacceptable, no figure at which the Labour Party and Starmer will say stop. Israel has carte blanche to continue with their historic plan to eliminate Palestine from the River Jordan to the Mediterranean Sea. They will continue to act with impunity until we decolonize, until we withdraw support for the establishment of an apartheid Israeli state built on stolen Palestinian land. So support for BDS, boycott, divestment and sanctions remains critical, as does marching in solidarity as part of our campaign. But if we are to help Palestine from the cycles of hell it is enduring, to end the treachery of Palestinian trust, we have to mainstream the issue in the labour and trade union movement and beyond. We need to organise within and outside to build a wave of support based on all the support that's been shown that is too big, too irresistible to be ignored by this or any other government. It was sad to see the self-inflicted climate-denying fires that caused death and havoc in California, but they pale into insignificance in comparison to the deliberate firestorms inflicted on the people of Gaza. We have a chance. Our generation has the opportunity to stop this wrong being done in our name. To do so, we need to tell our story, the continuing story of our country's betrayal of the Palestinian people. This is not just another international issue. It is our story. We, the British, brought this upon the Palestinian people. We need to make Labour be part of the solution that ends this oppression. So tell this real story in your world. and promote Palestinian voices to tell their story. This means going out in the local community, in your union branches, in your local constituency parties, churches, communities, wherever you are active, be it the local pub, your family, or wherever, that we need to start talking about it's our responsibility, it's our role to try and bring an end to what is going on, and not just another thing taking place somewhere else. I talked about promoting Palestinian voices, and we can't supplant those voices. And therefore, it gives me great pleasure and privilege to introduce Mustafa Barghouti. We've known each other for many years. Mustafa is one of the key Palestinian voices to which we always listen and try and take notice of what he's saying, because he is one of the key strategic thinkers, I think, in the Palestinian movement, taking us forward about what we should be doing and what's going to happen. So great honor. Lovely to see you again, Mustafa. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Hugh, and thank you, Rachel, and everybody for attending today. It is my pleasure to be with you again, and I'm glad we are able to do this seminar today. And I want to start by thanking all of you. I want to thank you for everything you have been doing in the Palestine Solidarity Committee and in general in different organizations, in the trade unions and others, for what you have been doing during the last 15 months in terms of solidarity with the Palestinian people. Your support, the huge demonstrations you organized, the support that was given to Gaza and the humanitarian needs in Gaza were very essential and very instrumental in sustaining the ability of the people to steadfast and survive this horrible war and this horrible aggression by the Israeli side. And it gives me great pleasure to be with you, and I am honored actually to be with you because we all see that you have managed to build the greatest solidarity with Palestinian people, and the marches you organize, which I encourage you to continue and not to listen to the British government, were the largest ever in the world. So thank you for everything you do. I thought I will brief you about the situation in Gaza and in the West Bank as well, and about the challenges we are facing now politically, but also at the level of the grassroots. As you know very well, and as you have seen, although we have the pleasure that so many Palestinian prisoners have been released by Israel in the exchange that is taking place, Gaza is living a terrible devastation. We have about 90% of all the homes and shelters in the north destroyed, and about 80 to 85% in the center and the south. Rafah is completely destroyed. So while I feel very proud about our people, the 700,000 people that insisted to go back to the north, to Gaza City, to Jabalia camp, to Jabalia refugee camp, to Beit Lahia, to Beit Hanun, regardless of the destruction, they went back, they put their tents or whatever they have on the demolished houses to send one message, that we, the Palestinian people, will not leave our homeland. We will not get out of Gaza except maybe in one direction, if possible, which is to go back for those who were ethnically cleansed in 1948, to go back and return to the towns and villages that they were displaced from. This image of hundreds of thousands of people going back was a very powerful message to the world and a very powerful message to the Israeli establishment that they have failed. They have failed in destroying Palestinian resistance. They have failed in imposing their control over Gaza Strip. They have failed in bringing back the Israeli prisoners without exchange and by force. And they have failed, most importantly, in conducting the ethnic cleansing, which was the very main goal of this war on the Palestinian people in Gaza. But today, we have a big, huge responsibility because people need us. People need a lot of support. I was speaking to our teams. As you know, we have in medical relief 80 teams now working in Gaza, all over Gaza, treating about 200,000 people every month. And I was speaking to our colleagues this morning, and they told me that the people in the north are in dire need for water. They are in dire need for tents and for basic needs. And for the first time, I have the pleasure to inform you that for the first time next Tuesday, we will be able to send support and material from West Bank to Gaza. This is the first time we will manage to do that, and that means we can collect more support to our people in Gaza in the coming days. The next stage is very important. As you have said, Hugh, my dear friend, as you have said, what we have now is a ceasefire, not the end of the war. And when you have many Israeli extremists, including Netanyahu, who might try to provoke the situation by reactivating the war. And that's why it is very important to continue the pressure on the Israeli government so that we can move into the next stage, which would include at the end of it, the end of the war. Without that, the risk on people in Gaza will be there. The risk of losing more lives will be there. And that's why our goal should be to try to do everything we can to maintain the ceasefire and also to make sure that the war will not happen again. But let me say that while there is a ceasefire in Gaza, and by the way, this is an additional reason why you should continue to march and continue to pressure. While there is a ceasefire in Gaza, the war has moved to the West Bank. And Israel has transferred actually the war to the West Bank. We are witnessing horrible attacks now all over the West Bank, not in one area, but in every area. But the biggest attacks are happening in Jenin, where the Jenin refugee camp has been actually ethnically cleansed. 90% of all homes in Jenin camp have been evicted. Many of the homes have been destroyed. Many of the houses were burned by the Israeli army, which continues to attack the camp and even the neighbors around the camp. But in addition to that, practically Jenin city is under curfew due to the fact that the Israeli military operation continues in various streets and neighborhoods of Jenin city itself. They also expanded the attack to Tulkarem. And you probably heard about the bombardment that took place in Tulkarem recently. And now they are destroying the infrastructure in Tulkarem city with their bulldozers and in Tulkarem camp. And we are sure they will move to Nur Shams camp as well. It's a huge operation and it is expanding to different places. Yesterday, they committed a horrible massacre in a village called, or a town called Tammun, which is in Tubas area near Jenin. In Tammun, they bombarded a civilian area with airstrike, with F-16 airstrike. And they killed 10 people in one strike and injured so many others. Israel is now using war tactics against the civilian population of the people who are under their occupation. I mean, this is by itself a very grave violation of international law, that a country that is occupying other people or occupying another country is using military tactics and military instruments to attack the people who are under their occupation. But the attacks are happening in Nablus as well, in Ramallah villages, in Qalqilia, in Bethlehem. They feel that they have a green light to do whatever they want, and there are no constraints anymore. That's, of course, besides the fact that they are expanding settlements at a rate that is unprecedented. The amount of land that was confiscated by Israel since October 7th is larger than all the land confiscated since 20 years, in the last 20 years. That gives you an impression about the scope of expansion of settlement activities. They've created since October 7th 52 new settlements, and 7 of them are in the so-called Area B, which is supposed to be under Palestinian Authority control, but they don't care about any of that. But the West Bank is suffering not only from the direct attacks of the Israeli army and the direct attacks of the Israeli settlers who burn houses, burn cars, attack communities, but in addition to that, Israel has imposed 900 military checkpoints all over the West Bank, including gates. And by gate, I mean a gate that is put in front of a town or in front of a village. And the army, when the army shuts it off, the town is a prison. People cannot get in or get out. And if they try to remove the barricade or the gate, they will be terribly punished. This is the kind of situation we have now. So many communities are imprisoned at 4 p.m. every day. Many are imprisoned maybe for days. And that is the kind of treatment we are receiving now in the West Bank. This is paralyzing the economic life. This is paralyzing, trade. It is paralyzing the provision of proper medical care to many communities. It is preventing people from getting out to receive medical and health care. It is paralyzing the university education because students cannot come to universities. And it is definitely affecting the schools and other things. So practically, Israel is imposing a situation where it is paralyzing the whole economic, social, and health life of the Palestinian population in West Bank. This is an additional reason why you should demonstrate, why you should pressure, why you should raise the fact that not only Gaza is under terrible oppression, but also the West Bank and, of course, including East Jerusalem. The other thing that concerns us a lot is the fact that today or tomorrow, the law that bans UNRWA's work in areas that are under Israeli control, and that bans and prevents any Israeli structure from dealing with UNRWA, is a very dangerous matter because it could mean the complete paralysis of all support to Palestinian refugees in the West Bank, but also a serious destruction of the ability of UNRWA to continue its humanitarian work in Gaza. And UNRWA being the largest organization that is providing humanitarian work in Gaza is very essential. Their services are very essential. And so shutting them down or blocking their work will have a very serious impact on Palestinian life. It is very well said, what you said, Hugh, that what we are facing here is not just occupation, is not only a system of apartheid. We are facing a settler colonial project, the aim of which is to repeat what happened in 1948, which is ethnic cleansing of Palestinians and replacing them with Jewish immigrants. The same thing is happening now in the West Bank. And the two big risks that we are facing as people are the risk of ethnic cleansing that they talk about and the risk of annexation of the West Bank completely to Israel. With an administration like the new American administration with Trump around, we started to hear very serious racist threats to the Palestinian people. In reality, the statements that were made by President Trump about moving the Palestinians from Gaza to Egypt and Jordan are nothing but a declaration of war on the Palestinian people. They are nothing but a declaration and advocacy of a war crime. And I called it a war crime in a recent interview with CNN. And I think we should be clear about it. There is no place here for soft talk. Things have to be mentioned as they are, and they should be described as they are. What President Trump is calling for is war crime. And if he is dreaming about getting the Nobel Peace Prize, by such statements, he's preparing himself to be described as a war criminal, advocating ethnic cleansing of another people. This is a very high risk. Of course, we, the Palestinians, will never accept to be ethnically cleansed. And when he spoke about 1.5 million, he meant all the population of Gaza. He just didn't know that there are more than 2 million. And it is good that Egypt and Jordan are completely rejecting these plans. Both Egypt and Jordan have said it clearly that, including the president of Egypt and the king of Jordan, both of them said this is a very serious risk and very serious danger on the national security of each of these countries, which is true. And but we need more protests. We need the British government to come out and say clearly and openly that they are against the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people in Gaza. And they have to say it clearly, and they have to say that they oppose Trump's plan. Yesterday, I had a meeting with all the representatives of European countries here, the EU, and I told them, we want from each of your governments a very clear statement against the plans of ethnic cleansing and specifically against what Mr. Trump has announced, and to say that this cannot be allowed to happen. What Israelis failed to do by force, by throwing no less than 87,000 tons of explosives on Gaza, which is about 36 kilograms of explosives for each man, woman, and child in Gaza, what they failed to achieve through this horrible attacks, Mr. Trump cannot achieve by political maneuvers. And there is no way that we will leave our country or accept to be ethnically cleansed. But it's a fight, and we need your support in preventing that from happening. The other very important point, which is, I get so many calls by different media outlets, and of course the Western media works in a strange manner. Somebody decides the tone, and then all the outlets repeat the same questions. And so the big questions that we keep getting now is, who will govern Gaza? Who will be in charge of Gaza? And should there be some kind of foreign force coming to rule Gaza? Should there be foreign Arab troops or foreign troops coming to the area? And it is really strange that these people, it's not enough for them that we were under Israeli occupation. They want to bring another occupation to Palestinians. And it is really so strange that they are talking about these things as if we, the people of Palestine, are unable to govern ourselves and are unable to take care of ourselves. It is absolutely humiliating and insulting to even think this way. And in my opinion, and this should be very clear, that the best solution to the situation in Gaza, as friends of Palestinians, I'm telling you that, is to implement the Beijing Agreement. The Beijing Agreement, which we signed all the Palestinian political forces were there, including Fatah, including Hamas, including PFLP, DFLB, Palestinian Initiative, and others. We all signed a very clear statement. I personally drafted that agreement. And it says that there should be a national consensus Palestinian government, agreed and accepted by everybody. And that government should be there in a temporary manner to prepare for free democratic elections for the Palestinian people. We are entitled to choosing our leaders in a democratic, free way. If you do that in Britain, then we have the right to do it here in Palestine. And I don't think the Americans or the British would accept that another country will come and rule them. I don't think British people will accept that a French governor comes to rule London, for instance. And what you accept for yourself should be the same for us, Palestinians. So I think the key point for the future is to implement Beijing Agreement. Unfortunately, I'm saying that, unfortunately, up till now, the Palestinian Authority is not moving in that direction. They are the ones who have to start or initiate the consultation about forming a national consensus government. I think this is the only realistic way to solve internal Palestinian differences, but also to create a structure in Gaza that could be responsible for reconstruction of Gaza. Something has to be clear here, that some other countries are trying to use the need for reconstruction as a way of to blackmail Palestinians and sabotage Palestinians to impose certain political conditions on us. And that's something that we will never accept and should never accept. So it is very important for me to tell you today that we need your solidarity, we need your pressure. We have to remember that the goal of our struggle was not only to achieve ceasefire. This is a minor goal. The main goal is to end occupation. The main goal is to have liberation for Palestinian people. The main goal is to be free from occupation, from the ethnic cleansing, from the system of apartheid that is imposed on us. And that's why the struggle should continue, even when there is, after the ceasefire is there, even if the war is over in Gaza, our struggle will continue because we want to be free. We want to finally have the right for self-determination, have the right to implement our national rights, and be able to run our lives and bring prosperity to the Palestinian people and bring just peace to the Palestinian people, a true peace, peace that is based on justice and not an agreement that is imposed on Palestinians. I keep repeating and saying all the time that had we have elections in 2021, which America did not support and Israel prevented, and unfortunately, while the elections were cancelled by the local Palestinian Authority, had we have these elections in 2021, no single party would have gotten an absolute majority. But we would have ended up with a pluralistic democratic system, and maybe we would have had a different kind of course of events if that had happened. I think now I reflect the opinion of the majority of the Palestinian people, the vast majority of the Palestinian people who want to see unity, who want to see a national consensus government in place to maintain unity between West Bank and Gaza, to prevent separation of Gaza from West Bank, and to guarantee in the long run, in the short run, actually, not in the long run, the right of the Palestinian people to freely and democratically choose their leaders. We have lots of challenges in front of us. We hope that the agreement that was signed will be implemented, and more than that, that it will be extended, and that the war will not come back to Gaza. And we also hope that the war that is conducted now against our people here in the West Bank will be stopped. For all of that, we need your help and solidarity. It is very important that you raise your voices specifically against two things that they are trying to do, that our enemies are trying to do. One is ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, especially in Gaza. And second, the annexation of the West Bank, which they are trying to do. I've just read some statements made by Witkoff, who is the envoy of Trump. He's now saying that Gaza is totally destroyed. It's difficult to live there. But instead of blaming Israelis for doing all of that horrible thing, he wants to convince Palestinians to leave Gaza. It's a very strange behavior, and it is not acceptable. So please continue your solidarity. Please continue your pressure. Pressure your government to issue a very clear statement against ethnic cleansing. And if they speak and if they claim that they support two-state solution, they have to do three things, or otherwise they are just practicing hypocrisy. They have to demand the end of occupation of all occupied territories, including, by the way, the Syrian occupied territory. And second, they have to demand the end and removal of all settlements from the occupied Palestinian territories, which these illegal settlements. And third, they should recognize Palestine. If they don't do these three things, then they should stop trying to cheat us with their hypocrisy about two-state solution. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mustafa. It's been inspiring as ever, and we hear you loud and clear that more protests are needed, and those are the demands coming from the Palestinian people. And please be assured, it is an honour for us to have you with us, and our continued solidarity to you and everyone in Palestine. We've got time for a few questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
So there's one here from Betty in Abergavenny, who says she is concerned about the issue of rebuilding of Gaza and the dilemma of the residents of the refugee camp. Is it time to be raising the right of return? The second one is from Ali. What do you believe are the prospects of a unified Palestinian leadership and new elections? What is preventing unity? And we heard you when you said about the implementation of the Beijing agreement, and if you could say a bit more about the barriers to that. Thirdly, sorry, there are a lot of questions. I'm going to try and fit in as many as we can. What is the situation with free access by international media, and what excuse does Israel now offer for continuing to ban international media from Gaza? And finally, I think you have covered this, but it would be a good one to sort of really go into a little bit more from Sue in York. What are the two most important and helpful things we can do to ensure self-determination for the Palestinian people? And I think you've offered us some options there in terms of our continued protests and pressure on the British government. I think that's probably enough to be going on with, quite wide-ranging. Thank you so much.
Sure, and if there are more questions, we can take them. But first, yes, the right of return is basic right for Palestinian people. It's a good way of saying things. If as I said, actually in several interviews, if President Trump is so concerned about the density of population in Gaza, then he should ask Israel to allow some of the Palestinian refugees or all the Palestinian refugees who were displaced in 1948 to be allowed to go back to Beersheba, to Ascalon, to many Palestinian communities, to Jaffa. This is the place they lived in. Their grandfathers and grandmothers lived in, and some of their parents lived there. So the people were displaced illegally, and the right of return is a right that Palestinians will never give up. And so, yes, of course, the right of return remains as one of the main goals of the Palestinian people. About the prospects for unity, of course, let me be clear here. I mean, I have to be honest with you. The Beijing Declaration says that there should be a national consensus government, but the person who should initiate the discussions about forming this government and consultations to form the government is the president of the Palestinian Authority. So it is in his responsibility to initiate that process, which he hasn't done yet. And the same applies for calling the meeting of what we call interim unified leadership of the Palestinian people. That would include all Palestinian leaders from different parties with the executive committee of the PLO. Again, the call for that meeting has to come from the president. So we keep asking for that. There are important Palestinian initiatives that are taking place now to exercise public pressure to move in the direction of national unity and to move in the direction of forming this national consensus government. What is an obstacle? I think the main obstacle is that some people in the Palestinian Authority are still stuck with old illusions. One illusion is that this Zionist Israeli establishment, and specifically this fascist government in Israel, can accept a compromise. It's nonsense to think this way. After they have even passed laws in the Israeli Knesset, which says that giving back any part of the territory that they are controlling requires 2/3 majority in the Knesset, or the law that says that the right of self-determination on the historic land of Palestine, which they call Eretz Israel, is exclusive for Jewish people, or the law that says that was passed after the 7th of October, which says which prevents the establishment of any Palestinian state. I think any illusion about the possibility of a compromise with these people is over. But some people are still stuck with that kind of thinking, as much as they are still stuck with another illusion, the second illusion, that the United States of America could be a mediator between us and Israel. I mean, even when Biden was the president, not Trump, he did everything he could to support the aggression on us. I think Biden will enter history, or will be classified in history as a person who participated, not only was complicit in, but participated in war crimes against Palestinian people, and allowed himself to lie several times about the issue of ceasefire, because we all know that 10,000 Palestinian lives could have been saved, and several Israeli lives could have been saved, including the lives of several Israeli prisoners, captives, if the agreement that was implemented now was implemented back in May. It was ready. The Palestinian side had accepted it. It's the same agreement practically to what is now implemented. But then Netanyahu was the one who blocked it. And instead of blaming Netanyahu, Biden allowed himself to lie and say that it was the Palestinian side that was preventing the agreement. Anyhow, I'm giving you this long answer to say that to think that United States can be a mediator is a totally wrong approach and an illusion. And these are the two illusions, in my opinion, that stand as obstacles to unifying Palestinians in one unity to continue our struggle to achieve freedom without illusions about these things. We will not stop pressuring to get to unity, because we think it's very essential for our success. And we hope eventually we will achieve it. About I think the issue about free international media, unfortunately, up till now, no media, foreign media, was allowed into Gaza. Even the international media that we have that can get to the West Bank, by the way, most of the foreign journalists are sitting in Jerusalem or in Tel Aviv. And rarely some of them come to see the real situation in the West Bank, which is a shame. In Gaza, not only all foreign journalists were prevented from reaching the areas there, but Israel also killed 204 Palestinian journalists, including some of the main correspondents of important stations like Al Jazeera. And the pressure on media continues. We try to bypass that by facilitating the social media that we are using to get information out. By the way, not only 204 journalists were killed, but also 1,080 of my colleagues, doctors, nurses, and health professionals were also assassinated and killed by Israeli aggression. And no less than 3,000 of the medical workers were injured. And no less than 254 were arrested, some of whom, like the director of Kamal Udwan Hospital, are still in Israeli prisons and Israeli jails. And we worry very much about them. The two most important things that can be done to support Palestinian self-determination is really to keep your voices up, to continue to march, but also to enhance as much as possible the boycott, divestment sanctions against Israel, including divestment from Israeli companies, including boycott of Israeli products, I think there is a lot of things that can be done to enhance BDS as a major instrument to transform solidarity into a material effect. And that's something that Israel is very much worried about. And that's why they run all these campaigns worldwide against BDS, claiming that it is anti-Semitic. Of course, it's not anti-Semitic, but this is the way that Israel is trying to fight any solidarity movement with the Palestinian people. But let me add also, whoever can provide support to the very important humanitarian work that we do, whether in Gaza or the West Bank now, or anywhere, that also would be appreciated because it would help the steadfastness of the Palestinian people.
Thank you, Mustafa. And that leads us nicely on. I've got just some little short questions, then we'll finish up by 7:30, if that's all right with you.
Of course.
Yeah, because there was one from Linda in Toronto, which was, how can we add our voices to those demanding massive aid for Palestine, which, especially in light of the UNRWA situation. There is one from Sahida, which was, do you expect any tangible, real support from the Arab nations, and will they change their stance? And then I know you did say the three things we should demand of the UK government, and I just wonder if you could finish on, what can local groups do when they meet their local MP, or they are, writing to their representatives or putting pressure on the UK government? What are the key things we should be lobbying our government on? And I do note what you said about boycott, divestment and sanctions, and obviously lots of local campaigning on that as well. And again, that's enough to be going on with, I'm sure, and then we'll be able to finish up. Thank you.
Thank you. Regarding the Arab nations, of course, you can't put all the Arab countries in one basket. There are different positions, and I think a country like Qatar has done everything it could to support the Palestinian struggle, and actually their presence in the mediation was very instrumental and very useful with the Egyptians. The big question here is two things. First of all, and by that I mean this is my way of classifying the position of any Arab country. First of all, they should never allow normalization with Israel at the expense of the Palestinian people. And those countries that normalized with Israel and continued the normalization even when genocide happened in Gaza, I think they don't mean well for the Palestinian people. And I am sure these countries, if they had a real democracy, and if their public, their people, had the chance to choose, they would not have allowed, if there was a real democracy in these countries, they would not have allowed such normalization to take place, and to use this normalization as a form of liquidating the Palestinian rights and the Palestinian future. So it is very important to take a stand against normalization while Israel continues its occupation and oppression of the Palestinian people. The second question will be how much each of these countries will help in reconstructing Gaza and in providing support to the Palestinian people, and how much they would refuse to be used and their resources to be used as part of a blackmail system to enforce political things on Palestinian people as in exchange for reconstruction. I think these are the main issues that have to be tackled. We know that the Arab people in general, wherever they live, are completely and totally supportive of the Palestinian rights. There is no question about that. We've seen huge demonstrations in Jordan. We've seen huge demonstrations even in a country like Morocco. and many other places. We've seen very big support coming from Lebanon and from Yemen. So there is no question about the feelings and the position of the Arab peoples themselves. But the question is how much the governments can be encouraged to support more the Palestinian needs and the Palestinian rights. On the question of what should be said to the MPs, I think the most important thing that should be said to the MPs is not to be biased to Israel, is to respect international law and refuse this approach of hypocrisy and double standard when you compare the positions of, for instance, the British government in the case of Ukraine with that in the case of Palestine. To remind these MPs that the British political system is largely responsible for what happened to the Palestinian people since Balfour Declaration and since the encouragement of Israeli Zionist movement. These are important things to be told to them. But the most important thing is to treat us equally as equal people. To refuse this kind of racist approach or white supremacy approach where Palestinians are treated differently. To say to them, if you care about Israeli or Jewish security, you should also care about Palestinian security. And also to explain to them that there will never be security for anybody here unless there is real peace based on the rights of the Palestinian people. I think these are important things, besides, of course, the issue of asking them to take a strong stand against displacement, against the idea of ethnic cleansing, and the idea of reactivating the war. One very important thing, because now all the emphasis is on Gaza, which is good. Gaza deserves that. But also, I think few of your MPs, or most of them, are not sufficiently really informed about what's happening also in the West Bank, about the attacks that are happening in the West Bank, about the actual war that Israel is conducting against the people of Palestine in the West Bank. So it's very important to explain all of that. Suppression of freedom of expression. The fact that, for instance, Israel banned Al Jazeera, why would you do that? I mean, such a level of oppression of freedom of expression. If it happened in another country, they will be all up in arms talking about democracy and freedom of expression and so on and so forth. So the most important message that I have is accept Palestinians as equal human beings, as equal people, and don't accept any kind of racist approach when it comes to Palestine.
Thank you so much, Mustafa, and that really shouldn't be too much to ask, should it, to treat Palestinians as human beings, and it's staggering how that is not the case in too many circles of power and elsewhere. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Hugh for his introduction, and thank you to everyone. We've had hundreds of people join us tonight, and it's been such a useful update for us all to cover such a wide range of issues, including what is going on in the West Bank, where we need to clearly shine a spotlight, but also what we can do here to stand up against ethnic cleansing, to what our response is when the government continually says, well, we want a two-state solution. We now have a response to give to that about what that actually means the government must do, rather than empty words, which it often seems. We'd like to remind people to donate if they can, to help cover our costs and help make sure we can continue to do events like this in the future. And obviously, as labour movement activists who stand with the Palestinian people internationally, our job here is to raise awareness of the truth about what is happening and speak up in solidarity. And that does not end here. As Mustafa has said, we have a ceasefire, but the war is ongoing, and we must continue to campaign for the peace and justice for Palestine and the liberation of the Palestinian people. And thank you all again, and solidarity.
Bye.